Rain hammered the cracked windshield of Ryan Dawson's pickup truck as he gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white against weathered skin that spoke of too many days working construction under the merciless Texas sun. The grocery bag on the passenger seat had cost him exactly $37.42, leaving him with enough gas money to make it through the week if he was careful. His 7-year-old daughter, Macy, sat in the back seat, her worn sneakers barely reaching the edge of the seat, humming a tune from some cartoon he couldn't quite place. She was his entire world, and that world was getting harder to keep stable with each passing month since her mother had walked out 2 years ago, leaving nothing but a note and a forwarding address in California that had bounced back his first attempted letter. The wipers struggled against the downpour as he turned onto Maple Street, his small rental house just 3 blocks away. That's when he saw her, a figure stumbling along the sidewalk, soaked through, no umbrella, no coat despite the November chill that had settled into their small town of Willow Creek. She wore what looked like expensive clothes, now plastered to her frame, and she was limping badly. "Daddy, that lady's wet," Macy said from the back seat, pressing her face against the window. Ryan slowed the truck, his practical nature warring with the impulse to help. He'd been burned before by good intentions, but his mama had raised him better than to leave someone in obvious distress. He pulled over, rolling down the passenger window. "Madam, you need help?" he called out over the sound of the rain. The woman turned, and even through the downpour, he could see she was beautiful in an understated way. Her dark hair hanging in wet strands around a face that might have been 30 or so, maybe a bit younger. Her eyes were sharp despite her bedraggled appearance, green and assessing. "My car broke down about a mile back," she shouted over the storm. "My phone's dead. I'm trying to find somewhere with a phone." Ryan didn't hesitate further. "Get in. We'll get you sorted out." She climbed into the passenger seat, shivering, carefully holding the grocery bag on her lap after Ryan had grabbed it. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd initially thought, probably around 28 or 29. Her clothes, despite being soaked, were definitely expensive, designer labels he recognized from department store windows he'd never actually entered. "I'm Gianna," she said, teeth chattering. "Gianna Kensington. Ryan Dawson. That's my daughter Macy in the back." "Hi," Macy said cheerfully, her gap-toothed smile bright in the dim interior of the truck. "Hi there," Gianna said, turning to smile at the little girl before looking back at Ryan. "I really appreciate this. I wasn't sure anyone would stop in this weather." "Can't leave someone out in a storm like this," Ryan said simply, putting the truck back in gear. "There's a gas station about 4 miles up that might still be open if you need to call someone." "Actually," Gianna said, hesitating, "would it be too much to ask if I could use your phone?" "Just for a quick call?" Ryan felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came with revealing the gaps in his life. "Don't have a cell phone at the moment. Between bills and, well, I had to make some choices. But you're welcome to use my landline at the house. It's just up here." He saw something flicker in her expression, something he couldn't quite read. But she just nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. The house was small, a 2-bedroom rental with peeling paint and a front porch that sagged slightly on the left side. Ryan had meant to fix it, but between work and taking care of Macy, time and energy were luxuries he rarely had. He pulled into the gravel driveway, killed the engine, and grabbed the groceries. "Come on in," he said. "I'll get you a towel." Inside, the house was clean but worn, furniture that had seen better days arranged neatly in the small living room. Pictures of Macy covered every available surface, chronicling her growth from a pudgy baby to the bright-eyed 7-year-old currently kicking off her shoes by the door. "Daddy, can I watch cartoons?" Macy asked. "Half an hour, then homework," Ryan said, the same negotiation they had every day. Gianna stood in the entryway, dripping onto the threadbare welcome mat. Ryan disappeared down the hallway and returned with 2 towels, handing her the larger one. "Phone's in the kitchen," he said, pointing. Bathrooms down the hall if you want to dry off proper. I might have some old sweats that could work temporarily. You're very kind, Gianna said, and there was something in her tone that made Ryan pause, and almost wonder in her voice, as if kindness was something surprising. While Gianna made her call and changed in the bathroom, Ryan started preparing dinner. The groceries he'd bought were simple: pasta, ground beef, a can of tomato sauce, some wilted vegetables that had been on sale. He'd learned to stretch $1 further than it had any right to go, creating meals that would feed them for days. He browned the ground beef in his ancient cast iron skillet, added diced onions and the vegetables, then poured in the sauce. Water boiled for pasta in a pot with a slightly bent handle. The kitchen filled with warmth and the smell of cooking food, a small comfort in a life that often felt like one endless hustle. Gianna emerged in his sweatpants and an old navy t-shirt from his brief stint after high school. They hung loose on her frame, but she looked more comfortable, her hair toweled dry and hanging in waves around her shoulders. Your daughter's watching something about talking animals, she said with a small smile. Yeah, she loves those shows. Educational, supposedly. Ryan stirred the sauce. Did you reach someone? Sort of. My assistant is arranging for a tow truck and a rental car, but with the storm, it might be a few hours. She hesitated. I called the local hotel, but apparently there's some kind of conference and they're fully booked. Ryan glanced at the window where rain still lashed against the glass. The forecast had said this storm system would last through the night. He made a decision that would have made his more cautious friends shake their heads. You're welcome to wait here. I'm making dinner anyway, and you shouldn't be out in this. He caught her eye. Nothing weird, just being neighborly. You can sit in the living room where Macy is. Doors always open. Something in Gianna's expression shifted, softened. Thank you. Really, you don't know how much this means. It's just dinner, Ryan said with a shrug, but he felt oddly self-conscious under her steady gaze. Gianna moved to the small kitchen table, watching him cook with an intensity that made him aware of every movement. He wasn't fancy, didn't know anything about gourmet techniques, but he knew how to make food that was warm and filling and made with care. You're good at that, she observed. Practice. Been cooking for Macy since she was 5. Her mom left and, well, we've made it work. He didn't know why he was sharing this with a stranger, but something about the storm and the unexpected intimacy of the moment loosened his tongue. That must have been hard. Hardest thing I've ever done was explaining to a 5-year-old why her mama wasn't coming back, but we're doing okay. She's happy, healthy, doing good in school, that's what matters. Gianna was quiet for a moment, then said, She's lucky to have you. Ryan felt heat that had nothing to do with the stove creep up his neck. I'm lucky to have her. She's my reason for everything. Macy wandered into the kitchen, her show apparently over. Is the lady eating with us, Daddy? If she'd like to, Ryan said, looking at Gianna. I'd love to, if that's okay, Gianna said, smiling at Macy. We're having spaghetti, Macy announced. Daddy makes the best spaghetti in the whole world. The whole world's a big place, Princess, Ryan said with a grin, but his heart swelled with the simple pride of his daughter's faith in him. They set the table together, Macy insisting on showing Gianna where everything was kept, chattering away about school and her best friend Emma, and the book they were reading in class. Ryan plated the food, the portions modest but adequate, and they sat down together, an oddly comfortable tableau despite the circumstances. The first bite seemed to surprise Gianna. Macy's right, she said. This is really good. It's just spaghetti, Ryan said, embarrassed by the genuine appreciation in her voice. It's more than that. It's made with care. You can taste the difference. They ate, conversation flowing more easily than Ryan would have expected. Gianna asked Macy about school, seemed genuinely interested in the elaborate story about the class hamster's escape. She asked Ryan about his work, and he found himself talking about construction, about the satisfaction of building something with his own hands, about the small company he dreamed of starting someday if he could ever get enough capital together. What about you?" he asked, realizing he'd been monopolizing the conversation. "What do you do?" Gianna hesitated just a fraction of a second. "I work in business, investment and management mostly." "Sounds fancy," Ryan said with a good-natured grin. "It can be, but it's not as real as this." She gestured around the small kitchen, at the clean but worn surfaces, at Macy swinging her legs under the table, at the simple meal. "This is real life." There was something in her tone, a wistfulness that Ryan didn't fully understand but felt nonetheless. After dinner, Macy helped clear the table, her nightly chore that she performed with varying degrees of enthusiasm depending on how tired she was. Tonight, she was showing off for their guest, making a grand production of carrying each plate carefully to the sink. Ryan washed dishes while Gianna dried, another oddly intimate moment that felt both strange and natural. Their hands brushed as he handed her a plate, and he felt a jolt of something he hadn't felt in years, something he'd thought had died when his wife left. Attraction, yes, but also connection, a sense of rightness that was both thrilling and terrifying. "I should help Macy with her homework," he said, stepping back slightly, needing some distance from whatever was building between them. "Can I help?" Gianna asked, and at his surprised expression, added, "I was actually pretty good at school." They settled in the living room, Macy spreading her math worksheet on the coffee table. Gianna proved patient and encouraging, helping Macy work through word problems without simply giving her the answers. Ryan watched them together, this strange woman in his clothes sitting cross-legged on his worn carpet, treating his daughter with genuine kindness and respect. The storm outside intensified, thunder rolling across the sky. Macy jumped a little at a particularly loud crack, and Ryan pulled her close. "Just noise, princess. Can't hurt us." "I know," Macy said, but she snuggled closer anyway. By the time homework was finished, it was past Macy's bedtime. Ryan checked his watch, realizing how much time had passed. "Time for bed, kiddo," he said. "But we have company," Macy protested, though her yawn undermined her argument. "Company will still be here while you brush your teeth," Ryan said firmly, but gently. Macy dragged herself up, then surprised both Ryan and Gianna by hugging the stranger goodnight. "I hope your car gets fixed," she said. "Thank you, sweetheart," Gianna said, and Ryan saw genuine emotion in her eyes. After getting Macy settled in bed, reading her 2 chapters of their current book, and enduring her delaying tactics with practiced patience, Ryan returned to the living room to find Gianna standing by the window, watching the rain. "She's wonderful," Gianna said without turning around. "She's my whole world," Ryan said simply, coming to stand a respectful distance away. "Can I get you something? Water? I think I have some tea somewhere. Water would be nice." They settled on opposite ends of the couch, the television off. Just the sound of rain and the occasional rumble of thunder filling the space. Ryan was acutely aware of her presence, of the way she seemed to really look at things, really listen when he spoke, as if his words mattered in a way he wasn't used to. "This is going to sound strange," Gianna said slowly, "but tonight has been one of the most genuine evenings I've had in years." "Getting stranded in a storm is genuine?" Ryan asked with a slight smile. "Being treated like a human being, not just a name or a position. Being welcomed into a home with such obvious love in it, sharing a meal made with care." She turned to look at him fully. "You didn't have to help me, especially given that, well, money's clearly tight, but you did anyway." Ryan felt uncomfortable with the praise. "It's just being decent. My mama would have tanned my hide if I'd left someone out in a storm." "Decency isn't as common as you'd think," Gianna said quietly. They talked for another hour, conversation ranging from the mundane to the surprisingly deep. Ryan found himself sharing things he rarely spoke about: the loneliness of single parenthood, the constant worry about money, the dreams he'd had to set aside. Gianna listened with an intensity that was both flattering and slightly unnerving. In turn, she spoke about her work, carefully, Ryan noticed, avoiding specifics. She talked about the pressure of expectations, the isolation of success, the difficulty of knowing who to trust. Ryan got the sense she was wealthy, probably very wealthy, based on the careful way she described her life, but it didn't change how he saw her. She was just Gianna, this woman who'd stumbled into his evening and somehow made it feel less empty. Around 11, headlights swept across the front window. A knock at the door revealed a professional-looking man in a suit, somehow immaculate despite the storm. "Miss Kensington, your car is ready," he said, not quite managing to hide his surprise at the surroundings or her appearance in borrowed sweats. Gianna stood, and Ryan felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. The evening had been strange but good, a break from his routine that had felt like more than just an interruption. "I should change back into my clothes," she said. "Keep them," Ryan said. "Your stuff's probably still damp." "Then I'll have to return them," she said, and there was something hopeful in her tone. She disappeared into the bathroom, emerging a few minutes later with his clothes folded neatly, wearing her own dried outfit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. She handed him a business card. "Thank you, Ryan, for everything, for your kindness, for the meal, for treating me like a person. It meant more than you know." Ryan took the card, noting the elegant script. Gianna Kensington, but no job title, just a phone number. "You're welcome, get home safe." She hesitated at the door, then impulsively reached up and kissed his cheek. "I hope to see you again." Then she was gone, climbing into a rental car that was nicer than anything Ryan had ever driven, leaving him standing in his doorway with his heart beating faster than it should, and the faint scent of her shampoo lingering in the air. He looked at the business card for a long moment, then carefully tucked it into his wallet before cleaning up and heading to bed, where sleep was a long time coming. The next morning arrived with weak sunlight and puddles everywhere. Ryan went through his usual routine, getting Macy ready for school, packing her lunch, dropping her off with a kiss and a reminder to have a good day. Then it was off to the construction site, where his crew was already gathering, assessing the damage from the storm. Ryan threw himself into work, but his mind kept drifting to the night before, to green eyes and genuine conversation, and the feeling of connection he'd almost forgotten could exist. He told himself it was foolish, that she'd been a stranger passing through, that the gulf between their worlds was probably vast. But still, he found himself checking his wallet during lunch, making sure the card was still there. 3 days passed. Ryan worked, came home, cooked dinner, helped with homework, tucked Macy in, and tried not to think about Gianna Kensington. He succeeded about half the time. On the 4th day, his phone rang during dinner. The landline so rarely rang these days that both he and Macy looked at it in surprise. "Hello, Ryan, it's Gianna." His heart did an odd stutter. "Hi, how are you? I'm good. I wanted to thank you again for the other night, and I was wondering, would you and Macy like to have dinner? My treat, obviously. There's a nice family restaurant in Willow Creek, Mario's, if you know it." Ryan knew it. It wasn't fancy by most standards, but it was fancier than anywhere he'd taken Macy in months. "You don't need to do that." "I want to, please. I'd really like to see you both again." Something in her voice, a genuine wanting, made him agree despite his reservations about Charity. They set a date for Saturday evening, 2 days away. "Who was that?" Macy asked when he hung up. "Remember the lady from the storm? She wants to have dinner with us." Macy's face lit up. "I liked her. She was nice and pretty. Is she your girlfriend now?" "No," Ryan said quickly, maybe too quickly. "She's just being nice, thanking us for helping her." But Macy had a knowing look that was far too wise for 7 years old. "Okay, Daddy." Saturday arrived faster than Ryan expected. He dressed in his best jeans, and the one button-down shirt he kept for the rare occasions that called for something nicer than T-shirts. Macy wore her favorite dress, the blue one with flowers, and insisted on wearing the necklace her grandmother had given her. Mario's was bustling when they arrived, families filling the red vinyl booths, the smell of garlic and tomato sauce heavy in the air. Gianna was already there, waiting by the hostess stand, and Ryan's breath caught slightly. She wore a simple green dress that brought out her eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she looked beautiful but approachable. Not the untouchable elegance she might have projected. Her face lit up when she saw them. "I'm so glad you came." Dinner was easy, conversation flowing as naturally as it had that rainy night. Macy chattered about school, about the upcoming fall festival, about the Halloween costume she was planning. Gianna listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Macy's stories. Ryan watched them interact and felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the protective walls he'd built around his heart. Gianna wasn't just being polite. She genuinely enjoyed Macy's company, treated her with respect rather than the condescension some adults showed children. After Macy excused herself to the restroom, Gianna turned to Ryan. "I haven't been able to stop thinking about that night." "Neither have I," Ryan admitted. "I'd like to see you again, both of you, if that's okay." "I know it's fast, and maybe strange, but I feel like I connected with you in a way I haven't with anyone in a long time." Ryan felt the familiar fear rise up, the voice that said he couldn't afford complications, that he had to focus on Macy, that getting involved with someone, especially someone who was clearly from a different world, was asking for heartbreak. But there was another voice, quieter but persistent, that said maybe he deserved something good, maybe Macy deserved to see her father happy. "I'd like that," he said. Over the next month, they fell into a pattern. Gianna would call. They'd meet for dinners or weekend activities, always including Macy, which Ryan appreciated more than he could say. She never pushed for time alone with him, seemed to understand that his daughter came first, that any relationship would include her. They went to the pumpkin patch, where Gianna helped Macy pick out the perfect pumpkin and didn't bat an eye when Ryan insisted on paying, understanding his need to contribute even when it was clear money meant different things to them. They carved it together on Ryan's porch, Gianna laughing as she scooped out pumpkin guts, looking more relaxed than Ryan had yet seen her. They went to the local park, where Gianna pushed Macy on the swings and joined in a game of tag that left them all breathless and laughing. She ate hot dogs from the cart without complaint, sat on the old wooden benches without worrying about her expensive clothes, and Ryan found himself falling for her in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. But questions nagged at him. She was always vague about her work, about where she lived, about the details of her life. She had nice clothes, arrived in nice cars that were always different, left generous tips that made restaurant servers' eyes widen. The gulf between them was becoming more apparent, and Ryan worried about what it meant. It was Macy who finally asked the question he'd been avoiding. They were having dinner at his place again. Spaghetti, because Gianna had specifically requested it, and Macy was setting the table. "Gianna, why do you always have different cars?" she asked with a child's directness. Gianna paused, fork halfway to her mouth. She looked at Ryan, and he saw something like fear in her eyes, a vulnerability he hadn't seen before. "I rent them," she said carefully. "My regular car is still in the shop." But Ryan heard the half-truth in it, saw the way she avoided his gaze. After dinner, after Macy was in bed, they sat on the porch, the November air cold enough that they could see their breath. "You're not just in business, are you?" Ryan asked quietly. Gianna was silent for a long moment. "No. Who are you, really?" She took a deep breath. "My full name is Gianna Marie Kensington. My family owns Kensington Industries. We have holdings in real estate, technology, manufacturing. I'm the CEO. I'm what people would call a billionaire." Ryan felt like the porch had tilted under him. "A billionaire. Yes. And you didn't think to mention this? I needed to know if someone could care about me for me, not for what I have. I'm so tired, Ryan, of people seeing dollar signs instead of a person. That night in the storm, you had no idea who I was, and you helped anyway. You welcomed me into your home, shared your food, treated me with kindness when I was just a stranger. Do you know how rare that is? So this was what, some kind of test?" Ryan felt anger rising, the feeling of being used, of having his genuine feelings manipulated. No, God, no. It started that way, I'll admit. I was testing something, seeing if genuine kindness still existed. But Ryan, the moment I sat at your table, saw you with Macy, talked with you, everything changed. This has been the most real thing in my life in years. I'm not testing you, I'm falling for you. Ryan stood, pacing the small porch. I don't know what to do with this. We're from completely different worlds. I'm a single dad barely making ends meet, and you're a billionaire CEO. How does that even work? I don't know, Gianna said honestly, standing to face him. But I know that I'm happier with you and Macy than I've been in years. I know that when I'm here, I feel like myself in a way I don't anywhere else. I know that I'm falling in love with you, with your daughter, with this life you've built. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for everything, Ryan said, and the anger drained away, replaced by fear of a different kind. That's what scares me. What happens when you get tired of playing at normal life? When the novelty wears off and you realize you're slumming it with a guy who can't afford a cell phone. Gianna closed the distance between them, taking his rough, calloused hands in her softer ones. This isn't novelty. This is the first real thing I've had in my adult life. Yes, I have money. Yes, I run a company. But none of that means anything if I'm alone, if every interaction is calculated, if I can't trust anyone's motives. You saw me as a person first. You still see me that way. That's everything. Macy has to come first, Ryan said, his voice rough with emotion. Whatever this is, she comes first. I wouldn't want it any other way. Ryan, I love that you're a devoted father. I love the way you sacrifice for her, the way you put her needs above your own. That's not something to apologize for. That's something to admire. They stood there in the cold November air, and Ryan felt the walls he'd built crumbling. I'm falling for you too, scared out of my mind about it, but falling nonetheless. Gianna smiled, and it was like sunrise. Can we figure it out together? Yeah, Ryan said. Yeah, we can try. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Ryan let himself fall, trusting that she'd catch him. The next weeks were a navigation of two worlds colliding. Gianna was honest about her life now, though she kept that part of her world carefully separate from their time together. She'd come to Willow Creek on weekends, dress in jeans and sweaters, be just Gianna, the woman who laughed at Macy's jokes and helped with dishes and kissed Ryan goodnight on his sagging porch. But Ryan also began to understand the reality of who she was. She had responsibilities, a company to run, obligations that took her across the country. She tried to call every night, video chatting with both him and Macy, but there were times when meetings ran late, when crises demanded her attention. It was an adjustment, learning to navigate the distance and the different demands on her time. Ryan found himself grateful for the ways she made effort, for how she never let Macy feel forgotten, always following through on her promises. 2 months into their relationship, Gianna asked if they could talk seriously. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Macy was at a birthday party, giving them rare time alone. They sat at his kitchen table, coffee growing cold between them. I need to be honest about what my life looks like, Gianna said. I'm CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. That means travel, late nights, constant demands on my time. I want to build something with you, with Macy, but I need you to understand what you're signing up for. I've been thinking about that, Ryan said. And I'll be honest, it scares me. Not the money, though that's intimidating as hell. But I worry about Macy, about her growing up in that world, losing the groundedness I'm trying to give her, about people treating her differently because of who you are. Those are legitimate concerns, Gianna said. And I don't have perfect answers, but I can promise you that I would never try to change how you're raising Macy. I can promise that I'd work to give her as normal a childhood as possible. And I can promise that I'll always put both of you first, even when it's hard. What about work? Your company? I'm good at what I do, Ryan. Very good. But I've realized that spending my whole life building an empire means nothing if I don't have anyone to share it with. I'm looking at restructuring, delegating more, maybe even relocating the main operations here to Texas. It's not impossible, it's just choices. Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand. I want this, us, but we need to go slow for Macy's sake. She's already attached to you, and if this doesn't work out, it'll break her heart. It'll break mine too, Gianna said softly. I'm in this, Ryan, completely. They sealed it with a kiss, soft and sweet and full of promise for the future. The holidays approached, and with them came new negotiations. Gianna wanted them to spend Thanksgiving with her family, an invitation that filled Ryan with dread. Meeting the Billionaire family as the broke construction worker dating their daughter and CEO felt like a recipe for disaster. But Gianna insisted, and more importantly, Macy was excited about it. So Ryan found himself on a plane for the first time in a decade, headed to Boston and a world he couldn't quite imagine. The Kensington estate was exactly as intimidating as he'd feared, a sprawling mansion that probably cost more than he'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Staff in uniforms greeted them at the door. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings higher than his entire house. It was overwhelming. Gianna's father, Gerald Kensington, was a silver-haired man with sharp eyes that assessed Ryan with one sweep. Her mother, Patricia, was elegant and reserved. They were polite but cool, clearly uncertain about their daughter's choice. But then Macy, fearless and charming, started chattering about her school and her friends, and something in the atmosphere shifted. Gerald softened, listening to her stories with a grandfather's smile. Patricia asked about her interests and seemed genuinely pleased when Macy talked about books. Dinner was formal, more forks than Ryan knew what to do with. But Gianna stayed close, guiding him through the social minefield with gentle touches and whispered instructions. When Gerald asked about his work, Ryan was honest, talked about construction, about the satisfaction of building with his own hands, about the company he hoped to start someday. That's honest work, Gerald said, and there was respect in his tone that Ryan hadn't expected. More honest than a lot of what passes for business these days. Later, after Macy was asleep in a guest room bigger than Ryan's entire bedroom, Gianna's parents asked to speak with them privately. Ryan braced himself for the conversation he'd been dreading. We were skeptical, Gerald said without preamble. When Gianna told us about you, we worried she was making an impulsive decision, that the difference in your backgrounds would be insurmountable. I've had the same worries, Ryan admitted. But watching you together, seeing how you are with your daughter, hearing how Gianna talks about you, I think we were wrong. Gerald looked at his daughter with obvious affection. She's been different these past months, happier, more grounded. That's because of you. Ryan makes me better, Gianna said simply. He and Macy make me want to be better. Patricia spoke up, her voice softer than before. What are your intentions, Mr. Dawson? I love your daughter, Ryan said, the words feeling both huge and simple. I want to build a life with her if she'll have me. I can't offer her fancy houses or private planes, but I can offer her honesty, loyalty, and a family that puts each other first. She has her own fancy houses, Gerald said with dry humor. What she needs is exactly what you described. You have our blessing, whatever you two decide to do. Ryan felt a weight lift that he hadn't fully realized he'd been carrying. Christmas came, and this time Gianna spent it in Willow Creek, in Ryan's small house that they decorated together with strings of lights and a real tree that filled the living room with the smell of pine. She wore flannel pajamas on Christmas morning, sat on the floor with Macy opening presents, and seemed more at home than in her family's mansion. She'd gotten Macy thoughtful gifts, nothing ostentatious, things the little girl had mentioned in passing that Gianna had remembered. Art supplies, books, a science kit. For Ryan, she'd gotten a set of professional carpentry tools, beautiful and practical, acknowledging his work and his dreams. Ryan's gift to her was far simpler, a wooden box he'd made himself, inlaid with a design of stars. Inside was a key. What's this? Gianna asked, holding up the simple brass key. It's to here, Ryan said, suddenly nervous. If you want it. A place to stay when you're in town or, well, more if we get there. I know it's not much compared to what you're used to, but Gianna kissed him, stopping the flow of words. It's perfect. It's home. They spent the day cooking together, playing board games, watching Macy's favorite movies. It was simple and perfect, and Ryan couldn't remember being happier. As winter turned to spring, they continued to build their relationship, navigating the challenges of their different worlds with increasing grace. Gianna did relocate much of her company's operations to Texas, renting an office space in Dallas that was close enough for weekend trips to Willow Creek. She hired a COO to handle day-to-day operations, allowing her more flexibility. Ryan, for his part, finally took the leap and started his own small construction company, something made possible by a business loan that Gianna helped him secure, though she was careful not to simply hand him money, understanding his need to build something himself. The company was small, just him and 2 other guys, but it was his, and it felt right. Macy thrived, her world expanding but her roots staying strong. She loved when Gianna was around but didn't fall apart when she traveled. She had her school, her friends, her father's constant presence. The addition of Gianna was a bonus, not a replacement for anything missing. One evening in late April, after Macy was asleep, Ryan and Gianna sat on the porch that he'd finally fixed, the new board solid under their feet. "I've been thinking," Ryan said. "That sounds dangerous," Gianna teased. "I'm serious. We've been together almost 6 months now, and I know it's still relatively soon, but I need to know if this is going where I think it's going, where I hope it's going." Gianna turned to face him fully. "Where do you want it to go?" "I want everything," Ryan said simply. "I want you here in this house or whatever house. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to give Macy siblings if you want that. I want to build a life together properly. Not just dating, not just seeing each other when we can. I want marriage and commitment and all of it." "Yes," Gianna said immediately. "I haven't actually asked yet," Ryan said with a laugh that was slightly shaky. "Then ask." Ryan got down on one knee on the porch he'd built with his own hands, pulled out a simple ring. Not a diamond, because he knew Gianna well enough by now to know she'd prefer something meaningful. It was a band of twisted silver and copper that he'd commissioned from a local artist. "Gianna Kensington, will you marry me? Will you take on me and my daughter and this complicated, messy, beautiful life?" "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring on her finger, and she pulled him up, kissing him with all the love and promise in her heart. They told Macy the next morning over breakfast. The 8-year-old shrieked with delight, immediately asking if this meant Gianna would be her mom now. "If you want that," Gianna said carefully, "you'll always have your birth mother even if she's not here, but I would be honored to be your parent too if that's what you want." "I want it," Macy said firmly. "Can I call you Mom?" Gianna's eyes filled with tears. "I would love that more than anything." The wedding was planned for late summer, a compromise between the large society event Gerald and Patricia wanted and the small, intimate gathering Ryan and Gianna preferred. They settled on a medium-sized ceremony in Willow Creek, outside at the small vineyard on the edge of town, with close family and friends. Gianna's world and Ryan's collided in the best possible way. His construction crew stood next to her business partners. Macy's school friends played with Gianna's nieces and nephews. It was proof that different worlds could not just coexist, but blend into something richer than either alone. Ryan stood at the altar in a simple suit, his hands steady despite his racing heart. When Gianna appeared, walking down the aisle in a dress that was elegant but not ostentatious, he felt his breath catch. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was his. They were choosing each other, committing to building something real and lasting. The vows they wrote themselves were simple and honest. Gianna promised to honor his role as Macy's father, to support his dreams, to choose their family over her company whenever it mattered. Ryan promised to embrace all of who she was, to support her career, to build a partnership of equals despite the differences in their bank accounts. "I never knew I was looking for you," Ryan said, his voice carrying across the assembled guests, "until that rainy night when you stumbled into my life. You've given me hope again, belief that I deserve love and happiness. You've been amazing with Macy, treating her with respect and affection. You make me want to be better, do better. I love you, Gianna. Not your money, not your position, just you." "I was testing strangers for kindness," Gianna said, her own voice thick with emotion, "but I was the one who was tested. You showed me what real love looks like, what it means to put family first, to sacrifice for the people you care about. You've given me a home, not just a house, but a place where I'm valued for who I am, not what I have. I love you, Ryan. I love our life together. I love the family we're building. Thank you for taking a chance on me." When they kissed, sealing their promises, the applause was thunderous, joy radiating from every guest. The reception was held in a large tent, dinner served family style with food Ryan had helped plan, recipes from his childhood mixed with dishes from Gianna's. Macy gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying, talking about how her daddy had been sad for so long, and now he smiled all the time because of Gianna. As they danced their first dance, Ryan pulled Gianna close. "No regrets. Not a single one," she said. "You. Only that I can't believe I got this lucky." "We both got lucky," Gianna corrected. "That storm brought me exactly where I needed to be." They'd bought a new house, a compromise between their two worlds. It was nice, comfortable, big enough for a growing family, but not ostentatious. It had a yard for Macy to play in, a workshop for Ryan's woodworking hobby, and an office for Gianna to work from home. They settled into married life with surprising ease, learning each other's rhythms and quirks. Gianna proved to be terrible at cooking, but excellent at helping with homework. Ryan discovered that he liked the rhythm of Gianna's business calls in the background, found it comforting rather than intrusive. They took turns with school pickup, with cooking, with bedtime routines. Macy flourished, secure in the love of both her parents. She called Gianna Mom without hesitation, though she never forgot her birth mother. They decided to be honest with her, age-appropriately, about the fact that sometimes parents couldn't be there even when they loved their children. It seemed to help, giving her context rather than abandonment. 6 months after the wedding, Gianna approached Ryan with news that made his heart stutter. "I'm pregnant," she said, a mixture of joy and nerves in her expression. Ryan picked her up, spinning her around. "Really? We're having a baby. We're having a baby." Macy was thrilled at the prospect of being a big sister, immediately taking her role seriously. She helped set up the nursery, picked out baby clothes, read books about being the best big sister possible. The pregnancy was mostly easy, though Gianna had some rough mornings that had Ryan bringing her crackers in bed and rubbing her feet in the evenings. She continued to work but scaled back her hours, determined to be present for both her pregnancy and for Macy. Ryan found himself falling in love with her all over again, watching her body change, seeing her patience with Macy's constant questions about the baby, witnessing her navigate board meetings with morning sickness and grace. Their son, Robert James Dawson, was born on a clear spring morning, 8 pounds and perfect. Macy, now 9, held her baby brother with careful reverence, declaring him the cutest baby ever born. Those first months with a newborn were exhausting and magical. Ryan took paternity leave from his company, which was doing well enough now to afford it. Gianna worked from home as much as possible, conducting meetings with a baby carrier strapped to her chest, proving that you could be a CEO and a mother simultaneously. They learned to function on less sleep, to coordinate schedules, to support each other through the challenges. When Ryan felt overwhelmed, Gianna took over. When Gianna needed to handle a crisis at work, Ryan managed the home front. They were a team, truly partners in every sense. Macy proved to be an amazing big sister, helping with diaper changes, entertaining Robert when he was fussy, writing to him even though he was too young to understand. The age gap was significant, but she took pride in her role, and Ryan could see the confident, caring person she was becoming. A year later, they were surprised but delighted to learn another baby was on the way. Their daughter, Rose, was born 2 days after Robert's first birthday, a calm baby who seemed to observe the world with quiet intelligence. Their house was loud now, full of laughter and crying and the constant motion of children. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely perfect. One evening, when Robert was 2 and Rose was 1 and Macy was 10, Ryan found himself on the back porch with Gianna, baby monitor beside them, watching the sunset. "Remember when we met?" Gianna asked, leaning against him. "How could I forget, soaking wet stranger on my doorstep?" "I was testing people's kindness," she said. "I'd become so cynical, so tired of people only seeing my money. I wanted to know if genuine goodness still existed. Did you find your answer?" "I found more than an answer. I found everything. You showed me that kindness isn't about what you have but who you are. You welcomed me, fed me, treated me like a person worth knowing when you had every reason not to. You taught me what love looks like when it's real. You taught me I could have this," Ryan said. "After my ex left, I thought I'd just be alone, focused on raising Macy. I didn't think I deserved more. You showed me I could have love and partnership and a family that keeps growing. Do you ever regret it? My world crashing into yours, all the complications." Ryan pulled her closer, kissing her temple. "Never. Not for a single second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me besides Macy. You've made our life richer in every way that matters." Inside, they could hear Macy singing to the babies, her voice carrying through the monitor. Ryan's construction company was thriving. Gianna's business was successful but balanced now, her priorities firmly in place. They had family dinners every night they could, took vacations together, created traditions. It wasn't always easy. There were still challenges, negotiations, compromises. Gianna sometimes had to travel, and Ryan missed her when she was gone. Money, while no longer tight, was something they still had to navigate carefully, respecting both Ryan's need to contribute and Gianna's desire to provide. But they faced everything together, united in their commitment to each other and their family. Years passed in the beautiful chaos of raising children. Macy grew into a thoughtful teenager, balanced and kind, planning to study education in college. Robert was energetic and curious, always building something or taking things apart. Rose was creative, filling the house with art and music. Ryan's company expanded, employing 20 people now, building homes throughout Central Texas. He'd achieved the dream he'd almost given up on, built something with his own hands and vision. Gianna continued to run Kensington Industries, but she did it on her terms, delegating, empowering others, making space for the life she valued more than any business deal. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows in the backyard of their home, surrounded by their children and the family and friends who'd supported them. Macy was 18 now, preparing for college. Robert was 9, already showing Ryan's practical skills. Rose was 8, artistic and dreamy. 10 years ago, Ryan said, holding Gianna's hands as their children and loved ones watched, a stranger knocked on my door in a rainstorm. I had no idea that opening that door would change my life. You've given me everything, Gianna. Love, partnership, more children than I dared to dream of, a life that's full and rich and exactly what I needed. I was lost, Gianna said, tears streaming down her face. Successful but empty, cynical and lonely, you showed me what really matters. Not money or power or position, but love and family and building something real together. You've made me happier than I ever imagined possible. I love you, Ryan Dawson, with everything I am. They kissed as their children cheered, Robert making exaggerated gagging sounds until Rose elbowed him. They laughed, breaking apart, surrounded by the beautiful chaos of their life. That night, after the party was over and the kids were asleep, Ryan and Gianna sat in their bedroom, a space that had evolved over the years to reflect both of them. "I keep thinking about that rainy night," Ryan said. "What if I hadn't stopped? What if I'd driven past?" "But you didn't," Gianna said. "You stopped because that's who you are, kind, generous, unable to leave someone in need. That's what I fell in love with." "I fell in love with your strength," Ryan said. "The way you could be this powerful businesswoman, but also vulnerable enough to admit you needed help, needed connection. The way you loved Macy without hesitation. The way you chose us over and over." "Easiest choice I've ever made," Gianna said. "Everything else is just details. This, us, our family, that's what matters." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity and the passion that hadn't dimmed with time. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Ryan felt the deep contentment of a life well lived. The years continued their march. Macy graduated college and became a teacher, finding her calling working with children just as her parents had modeled. She brought home a young man named David who treated her with respect and made her laugh, and Ryan gave his blessing with only a few stern words about expectations. Robert developed a love for engineering, spent hours in Ryan's workshop learning to build, to create, to problem solve. He had Gianna's sharp mind and Ryan's practical skills, a combination that served him well. Rose pursued art, her work showing early promise. Gianna and Ryan supported all their children's dreams, providing opportunities but teaching the value of work and perseverance. When Macy got married, Ryan walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, this girl who'd been his whole world now making her own family. Gianna stood beside him, their younger children in the wedding party, and they watched their oldest take the next step in her journey. "We did good," Gianna whispered. "We did great," Ryan corrected. Life settled into a new rhythm as the children grew older, needed them differently. Ryan and Gianna found themselves with more time together, rediscovering each other as partners beyond parents. They traveled, taking trips they'd deferred while raising children. But they always came back to Willow Creek, to the town where their story began, to the community they'd built. On their 20th anniversary, they returned to Mario's, the restaurant where they'd had their first real date. It looked much the same, red vinyl booths and the smell of garlic. They ordered spaghetti, the dish that had started it all. 20 years, Ryan marveled. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like forever." "The best 20 years of my life," Gianna said. "Every challenge, every joy, every ordinary moment, I wouldn't change any of it." "Remember when you told me you were a billionaire?" Ryan asked with a grin. "I thought my heart was going to give out." "Remember when you thought I was testing you?" Gianna countered. "You were so angry." "I was scared," Ryan admitted. "Scared of getting hurt, of Macy getting hurt, scared that we were too different." "We are different," Gianna said. "But that's what makes us work. You keep me grounded. I push you to dream bigger. We balance each other." "Best accident of my life," Ryan said, raising his water glass in a toast. "Here's to rainstorms and flat tires and strangers who become everything." "To kindness," Gianna added, clinking her glass against his. "To a man who saw a stranger in need and helped without hesitation. To the life we've built." They finished their dinner, drove home to the house full of memories and love. Their children were older now, Robert in college, Rose in high school, Macy married and starting her own family. The house was quieter than it had been in years, but it was full in the ways that mattered, full of love and laughter and the evidence of a life shared. Pictures covered every wall, chronicling births and birthdays, holidays and ordinary moments that had become precious with time. That night, lying in bed with Gianna's head on his chest, Ryan thought about the journey they'd taken. From a struggling single dad barely keeping his head above water to a successful businessman with a family he'd never dared to dream of. From a cynical billionaire testing humanity's kindness to a woman who'd found home in the last place she expected. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "I love you too," Gianna murmured, already half asleep. Ryan closed his eyes, peaceful in a way that had once seemed impossible. He'd learned that kindness mattered, that opening your heart despite fear was worth the risk, that love could bridge any gap if both people were willing to try. He'd learned that sometimes strangers knocked on your door in rainstorms, and if you were brave enough to answer, they could change your entire world. And he'd learned that the richest man wasn't the one with the most money, but the one with the most love, the most family, the most moments of connection and joy. By that measure, Ryan Dawson was the wealthiest man alive. Years later, when grandchildren filled the house with noise and chaos, when his hair was more silver than brown and Gianna's was elegantly gray, they would tell the story of how they met. The grandchildren would listen with wide eyes to the tale of the rainstorm, the broken-down car, the single dad who stopped to help. Was it love at first sight? One grandchild would inevitably ask. Ryan and Gianna would exchange a look, a lifetime of love and understanding passing between them in a single glance. It was kindness at first sight, Ryan would say, and everything else followed, Gianna would add, because that was the truth, simple and profound. One act of kindness on a rainy night had led to everything else, a lifetime of love and family and joy. It had led to mornings of coffee and conversation, evenings of laughter and shared responsibility. It had led to children and grandchildren, to a business built and a company run, to challenges faced and overcome together. It had led to a love story that started with a test of humanity and became a testament to it, proving that genuine connection and real love could overcome any obstacle, bridge any divide, weather any storm. And on quiet nights, when the house was peaceful and they sat together watching the sunset, Ryan would remember that rainy evening when everything changed. He'd remember the feel of uncertainty, the choice to help despite having so little himself, the moment he'd opened his door to a stranger. It was the best choice he'd ever made, the beginning of everything that mattered. Sometimes, when the rain fell and thunder rolled across the Texas sky, they would stand together at the window, hands intertwined, watching the storm. And they would be grateful for that long-ago tempest that had brought them together, for the kindness that had sparked a connection, for the love that had grown from the simplest of gestures. "Thank you," Gianna would whisper. "For what?" Ryan would ask, though he knew. For stopping, for helping, for seeing me, for loving me, for everything. And Ryan would pull her closer, kiss her temple, and hold her as the rain fell and the thunder rolled, secure in the knowledge that they'd built something beautiful together, something lasting and true. Their love story hadn't started with grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It had started with a man who had little but gave anyway, and a woman who had everything but was searching for something real. It had started with kindness, with connection, with the simple human need to help and be helped, and it had become everything. As twilight settled over Willow Creek, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Ryan and Gianna stood together in the home they'd made, surrounded by the evidence of their life together. And they knew, with the certainty that comes from years of choosing each other, that this was exactly where they were meant to be. The journey from that rainy night to this peaceful evening had been long and sometimes difficult, but they'd traveled it together, hand in hand, heart to heart. They'd proved that love wasn't about money or status or perfect circumstances. It was about showing up, being present, choosing each other again and again. It was about kindness opening the door and love building a home, and in the end, that was everything.